Hello and welcome to Hawkeye Nation. This is Hawkcast, your Iowa football, basketball, and recruiting podcast brought to you by Go Iowa Awesome and Rivals.com. I'm your recruiting analyst, not just an analyst, recruiting analyst and host, Elliot Clough at Elliot Clough on Twitter, joined as always by publisher Adam Jacoby and managing editor of the site, Ross Binder. Before we get started, make sure if you are watching on YouTube, you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, drop a comment. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, hit subscribe, leave that rate and review. It helps us out a lot. So a lot to talk about actually on this May 2nd podcast, the day that this comes out. We're recording here the night of May 1st, but a lot of small things to hit on today. And well, maybe not small things. We're going to start off with, is this email regarding the whole gambling situation between Iowa and Iowa State. And for this, I'm going to defer to Adam because you shared the information with us. You know more details on this whole thing, and you could probably explain it better than I can. So if you want to read the email, give us the situation at hand, and yeah, just kind of tell us what's going on there because I think it will leave it left me shocked. It'll leave everybody who's listening who hasn't seen the email shocked too.
Yeah, so it's an email from Chris Adkins of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, DCI, which is that's what DCI stands for, and in the sports wagering unit. And it's two of his fellow agents, Brian Sanger and Troy Nelson. And Brian is a name that I think a lot of Iowa fans are more familiar with than they would like, and probably than Brian would like at this point, because he has been sort of at the epicenter of the gambling investigation, where pretty much all the criminal charges have been dropped, and now there is a federal suit against the state of Iowa on behalf of Iowa and Iowa State athletes, 26 in total, because they were the ones that were sort of caught up in this gambling investigation. That botched is a kind word at this point for what has happened, and there is probably going to be a substantial reward's not the right word. The state of Iowa will probably have some work to do to make these athletes whole. We'll put it that way. So in the process of the investigation, or excuse me, of the lawsuit, one of the emails that went from Adkins to Brian and Troy was released to the media today. Keith Murphy of WHO 13, shout out to Keith, really good guy, as Elliot can attest as well. So Keith took or just released a picture of an email. And I'm not going to read all of it because it is about 8 paragraphs, but a few of the underlined for emphasis portions here. And the discussion is about whether or not they should investigate the players who were caught up in the investigation. So to quote, as far as the coaches, players, and managers are concerned, we don't necessarily have a crime on the books in Iowa, but I think it would be a good idea to report them to the university, the Big Ten, and the NCAA. If they get suspended or get a scholarship taken away, so be it. I know it seems like a lot of work for something small, but on a case like this where it will be higher profile, we can show our worth to the powers that be, I think he meant, along with sending out a warning that we will be overseeing things and hopefully work on slowing down these sorts of things in the future. He's referring to athletes gambling. And if we pursue this and it hits the media, which it would, correct, and people start asking why nothing criminal was done, we can use that platform to hopefully push legislators for code changes moving forward. You can read between the lines on that one. And then at the end, the Adkins says they, in reporting, and this is in reference to the University of Iowa in particular, they will do everything possible to keep it in-house and sweep it under the rug. I have direct experience with this dealing with the U of I athletic department. We investigated a sexual assault by 2 football players years ago, and the athletic department was aware of it months before we found out. They tried to deal with it in-house. And if he's referring to what I think he's referring to, it's the uh, assault that happened in, oh, I'm blanking on the year, but it was either late 2000s or very early 2010, 2011. Ross, do you remember which year in particular that was? If I'm
Yeah,
thinking of the right one.
that was after 2007.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the reference there. And that is why they did not involve the athletic department and um, tried to make an example out of the athletes that were caught up. And the sum effect, which was Noah Shannon betting what $10 on women's basketball and getting his scholarship revoked for his sixth, free COVID senior grad student season, whatever you want to call it. And it turns out that was not an unfortunate side effect. That was exactly what they were trying to do. And based on what's being said here, it's because they wanted the NCAA violations to actually be criminal charges going forward. Not to get the people that were caught in the investigation charged, but next time, right? Like get the legislators to make, NCAA violations actually illegal. And this is a really startling thing to see put on paper by law enforcement. And both those words are key here, law enforcement. Ratting somebody out to the NCAA for a violation of those rules to curry favor with legislators, to make it as high profile as possible and consequences be damned. That's a tough thing to read. And if I were a family member of one of the 26 athletes that was caught in this, I would have a really, really tough time keeping my composure seeing this, to put it mildly. So we will see how the lawsuit goes forward from here. I would say that the Chris got a few things right in terms of, the media was involved quite a bit. He did not get the prediction right that everyone would be oh, well, it's not criminal, but it should be. The state of Iowa, the DCI, these guys did not come off as the heroes that they clearly imagined they would be when this whole plan was coming into place. And it is blown up in their face in spectacular fashion. And we'll see how much of a pound of flesh gets taken off of the state for this. But it really seems deeply, elementally inappropriate to me to see this sort of callous indifference to whether or not something is illegal when it comes to whether or not law enforcement should be putting effort into it. And I it's not my first time around the sun. I know that overreaches and oversteps in law enforcement are as old as law enforcement itself. I know. But this is as close to a smoking gun of indifference to the rights of the individuals involved that I've seen in a long time. Ross, you are you are more up on the ins and outs of legality than I am, having gone to law school yourself. What was your thoughts, or what were your thoughts when you saw this letter?
Surprised that they would put this down in writing, because it's the sort of thing that in this situation, when it becomes public, it's just so damning against the institution and is such clear evidence of malicious intent that it's candy if you're a defense attorney or a plaintiff's attorney and looking to get a good settlement or getting damages, because this is the smoking gun, like you said. I mean, it's clear they were targeted specifically, intentionally, and without a clear and obvious crime to charge them with, because they wanted to use them to make an example for other purposes. So it's just breathtakingly stupid on one level, and just capricious. And yeah, I mean, through the athletes involved, I mean, it's vindication to an extent of evidence that yes, they were maliciously targeted by this agency, and they are fully in the right in their action against the state of Iowa, and I fully expect them. I expect a settlement, because things like this are why you don't go to trial, essentially, and you don't go through a discovery process, because you know what? This probably isn't the only email or memo out there that says something that DCI or other individuals within the state do not want to be made public. And they will be very interested in making sure no other documents become public. And I'm sure they'll be extra motivated to come up with a settlement offer that these athletes and their representation will agree to. So, and hopefully that's something that, no amount of money they get can make up for the lost year of eligibility, the impact on their professional futures, and everything, and their reputations. I mean, it's a ridiculous and terrible thing for them. But at least the best resource, for restitution our justice system has is to get them money, and we can do that. We should do that, and that's going to happen. So,
Ross,
Elliot, you've been
I was just
nodding
going to say,
along.
Ross, it's not even Sunday, but you're preaching out here. What did I put in the rundown for? So what you said that I was so animated about was that this is so stupid, and the lawyers are going to eat this the hell up. What did I put in the rundown? Email by dumbass. Like that was my response when Adam shared the email with us when he saw from Keith on Twitter, was because, like, what does Keith's tweet say? Obtained via Freedom of Information Act. You can't even go to this guy's desk and talk to him. You can't call him. You put it in an email. And the thing that really caught my eye that you did a good job of emphasizing, Adam, is this first paragraph that you didn't even read, but you were able to hit on. Is I was thinking about the discussion yesterday surrounding the Iowa football program. I might be in the minority, but I think this is one of those things that would bring attention to our unit, not only in the public's eyes, but also as far as the commissioner and even the legislatures. You hit on it with a different section, but you think this is going to be good for PR?
The thing of it is, they really did think that. I was speaking with a source that has knowledge of this situation. And one of the things that they pointed out, I was under the impression when I first saw this, that this was a politically motivated sort of thing. And what the source hit on and sort of harped on was that Brian Sanger was in line for speaking duties, and that they were trying to sort of create this sort of new way or new paradigm of gambling enforcement, and if they get results, then that's all that matters. And he was lined up for conference keynote speeches, and that's where you start to see that this was really I mean, people want to say that this is some grandiose, how far does does this go all the way to the top? And it really sort of was an agent in a department saying, we could be famous for this. We could show everybody how good we are at this. That's what it looked like. The intent was as long as they get a head count out of this, or a body count, or whatever you want to call it, that they were going to get covered in glory for it. There does not seem to be, outside of just hey, maybe I'm in the minority here, but outside of that, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of thought that, hey, there might be rights violated. So, this is sort of the FAFO of LFO or of LEO. Sorry, I think LFO sang Summer Girls. The FAFO of LEOs, but like, hey, they made this bet, and here is the email that says we plan on making this bed. This is a good bed for us to lie in after we make it. There's no argument at this point. And so they're gonna get what's coming to them for it. And I don't think those keynote speeches are gonna, be still waiting for them in, this summer and beyond. We'll put it that way.
This will be the last thing I say, and then we can move on unless you guys got anything to add. Is just the sheer ego and arrogance involved in this. In the email specifically, but in the entire thing by these individuals is baffling. And to have it blow up in their face is poetic justice. So, to move on here, not talk too much about legality here on Hotcast. Another bit of news today that we've got to talk about regarding the Iowa football program. Portal target Raylen Sharpe, a wide receiver from Missouri State, commits to Fresno State over Iowa. North Texas and can't remember. I think there was another school involved in his recruitment, but I know he went on visits to those three and got offers from a variety of other group of 5 schools. But a small playmaking receiver, 5'9", 172, I think, with a ton of speed. He ran track at Houston and played football at Houston before he transferred to Missouri State. But he's got 2 years of eligibility, if I'm remembering right, and he's going to spend them at Fresno State instead of at Iowa. Ross, I'm going to go to you first on this. Initial thoughts when you first saw that news and that he had committed to the Dogs instead of the Hawks.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little surprising. You don't expect Iowa to lose a lot of recruiting battles, either for high schoolers or portal guys, with Fresno State. They are a group of 5 or 6 or whatever, however many conferences are in that group now. School, they don't have the NIL resources that Iowa does, and the other platform that a Big Ten university provides. So yeah, I mean, to choose that is surprising. They do have a much better offense. They do have Jeff Tedford as their head coach, who has a strong history of producing NFL talent at the quarterback and receiver position. So that is a plus for them over Iowa. And so, part of me wonders how much of an indictment is this of, the Iowa offense of the last few years and still the lingering, results of, what we've seen on the field, that it's still impacting their ability to get, talent to fix that, people see what the offense was and the limited opportunities for receivers, especially in this case. And they're like, I think I'd rather go, even to a non-Power 4 school to play than go there. So it's sobering, and it says that there's a lot of work that Tim Lester and John Budmeyer and the rest of the offensive coaches and players need to do to change that perception. I would think.
I am in the same boat for a variety of reasons, and what you said is regarding the on-field product from Iowa. Like, it's going to take a while to get rid of that reputation. You can't just get rid of the last 3-4 years of being the 135th, whatever it is, 130th ranked offense in the country, dead last offense in the country, and going into a new season with a quarterback who's routinely injured, has had 3, I believe, 3 surgeries in the last 3 years. He's had 3 injuries, or 2 injuries at the least now, with the ACL and then the injury he had coming in from Michigan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere in there, he's been hurt a lot. and he spent more time on the sideline at Iowa than under center. And not only that, the other quarterback on the sideline went 2 for 7 in the bowl game for 7 yards, 4 yards, I think, Marco Lainez. Um, and then your starter for the majority of the season's in the portal after having the worst season in college football last year at quarterback. Like the stuff adds up, and you could say, "Hey, we've got this flashy new guy," but guess what? You've already lost Jacob Bostic, who was loyal to the program for 2 years, though he was injured, and he spent a spring with this new guy. And Jacob Bostic, I think honestly, I think the world of the guy. He's a super nice kid. And it's really unfortunate to see him go, but he's got 4 years of eligibility. He's got offers from Ole Miss, Iowa State, Vanderbilt, Houston. Like these schools see the value in him, and Iowa wasn't able to hold on to him. And now they're heading into the fall with 7 scholarship receivers, 2 of which are true freshmen. One is hurt in Alex Moda. I don't know if he's going to be back. He was in a wrap at the spring practice that we were able to attend in the open spring practice. The offensive line struggled last year despite being largely veterans. They're going to basically all be back this year, though we don't know that they are going to be able to be consistently better than they were last year. So, but you got a new offensive coordinator. That's really the only pitch plus money. But if you have the opportunity to go to a place like Fresno State, ball out at the end, assuming you're able to make it to the NFL, you're probably going to make more money in the long term that way than you will by taking the short term and finishing the season with 12 catches, like just based on recent history, right?
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned is this reputation is gonna, stick around for a little bit. And, the last time that Iowa, last season, Iowa was the only team in FBS that averaged under 5 yards per pass attempt. Right? Like there are option running teams that threw for fewer yards total, but of course there are. Of course they threw for less, but they at the very least had some level of efficiency when they did throw, because they were actually able to punish teams for putting 9-10 guys in the box in a way that Iowa never really figured out how to do. And so, yeah, there is sort of an opportunity there for wide receivers, especially after Bostic left. But at some point, Iowa coaches and Tim Lester are really just asking for a leap of faith from anyone who may or may not be wanting to transfer in, because the results of the new Tim Lester offense are, not going to show up on paper until September, October, et cetera, et cetera. And so, of course, it makes sense for a wide receiver prospect, transfer portal kid like Raylen to look at Fresno instead, because Fresno knows how to throw the ball. Jeff Tedford knows how to throw the ball. Tedford knows how to put guys in the NFL. The last 2 receivers, there's been 2 receivers drafted into the NFL under Kirk Ferentz in the last 20 years. And that's Amir Smith-Marset in the 5th round, Marvin McNutt in the 6th round in 2012. It's it. And that is a bleak track record, especially when you look at the production or nearly complete lack thereof from the wide receiver corps just last year. And again, some of that had to do with coaching and the work of coaches that are no longer here. I get that. Kirk Ferentz's reputation as a run first, tight end first, throwing, 20th century offense coach, that's still going to stick around, and it's up to Iowa to prove it on the field before the recruits who can really make that difference in that passing game show up. Like this is Tim Lester has so much work on his hands, and part of that is going to be convincing difference makers that they actually can make a difference in the Iowa passing game. And it's been a few years since anyone's really done that. And so, some of it's bad luck. Some of it's terrible luck, especially with injuries on the offensive line. Guys, transferring out, or, in the case of Arlen Bruce transferring because they were about to get nailed on gambling charges, to bring it back to that unpleasantness. But even with the bad luck aside, we all saw the plays that were being called and run and executed, executed much in the same way that a convicted murderer is executed. We'll put it that way. And if I'm 16, 17, or even, I guess 19, 20 years old, and I still believe that my future's in the NFL, ooh, I would really have to have my arm twisted to think that Iowa is my best shot at the league. And so that is the wall that Iowa's going to keep running into in recruiting, unless and until the Tim Lester offense shows that, there are some 21st century passing concepts happening at Kinnick Stadium by the home team, to be specific here.
Do you remember what I said about a couple players? I'll go to you here in a moment, Ross. Adam, when we were talking about potential articles after the spring game regarding two receivers, do you remember what I said?
Remind me.
Okay. One of my article ideas was that this offense is contingent on Caden Weegan and Caleb Brown, that they're the only hopes to open things up for this offense. Now, I would add Seth Anderson into that, but he was hurt for the spring game. So, and the reason I say those two names is talent, first of all. Second of all, this offense is more geared to possession receivers, right? You get them the ball, you get them in space, and let them create. And those are the two guys with the speed to make it happen, and for Caleb Brown more so than Caden Weegan, the playmaking ability to make it happen. So much of Tim Lester and John Budmeier's success on the recruiting trail with high school and with portal guys in the next 2-3 years is going to be contingent on Caden Weegan and Caleb Brown, and therefore Seth Anderson as well. And just the overall success of the offense is going to be contingent on them, because if they can't make plays in space, if they're unable to get the ball, then what are the opposing defenses going to do? They're going to load the box. And I'm not going to say that we're going to see the same thing as we did under the Brian Ferentz era, because one thing that we've repeatedly heard from opposing defenders is that, oh, we knew exactly what they were going to do. And so did everybody in Kinnick Stadium, at least anybody with some football IQ. But it's going to be different because it's a different guy leading the offense, right? You've had a year of growth, but so much of it is going to be contingent on those three guys. And soon enough, KJ Parker. I think KJ Parker, though he was a recruit from the previous under Brian Ferentz's OC, though, and Kelton Copeland as wide receivers coach, I think he's a guy that can be that guy for you. He's a playmaker. And are they going to go to their ex guys? Are they going to go to Dayton Howard? Are they going to go to Jarriett Bowie? Are they going to go to Reese Vanderzee?
They kind of have to. If the offense is going to work, they kind of have to.
Right.
Ross, we've been putting you on ice for a few minutes here.
What?
I was just saying we had you on ice. You had a point earlier.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I was going to note that, Elliot, you mentioned after Sharpe's visit to Iowa City that it seemed to go pretty well. So that was another thing that surprised me, I think, that, he had a good visit, gets the offer. It seems like things look pretty solid for Iowa and Sharpe. And then obviously now today comes and he did not choose Iowa. So, I think that's also a little disappointing that they got him on campus, had a good visit, and obviously weren't able to, finish the deal. So, that is disappointing. And like you said, that leaves Iowa, barring some, late Hail Mary receiver addition, which doesn't seem likely right now. I don't know, maybe. But that leaves them with the guys they've got on campus now, or the guys coming in this summer. And that really puts the onus on them to step up and perform this fall. And like you said, someone has to show that, yes, receivers can have success in the Tim Lester offense at Iowa. And that will maybe open a few more doors in the future for the next, Sharpe to say, hey, maybe Iowa is a place where I could have some success.
Right. I did get some intel that premium subscribers were privy to about how the visit went. It sounded like things were positive, and he left on a good note, and ultimately made the decision that he would not end up at Iowa, of course. And we'll see how that plays out. I mean, like, what kind of, well, one, it kind of leads into our conversation up next. I don't know how much the scholarship situation affected this either. That's a guess. I don't have any information regarding that, but I'm curious as to where that put him and or other guys that they're recruiting out of the portal that would want scholarships, that would be scholarship worthy players. I don't know that it would, but that is a thought of mine. And in addition to that, like, what kind of quality of player are you going to get out of the portal now? Right? Like, those quality guys, those guys that everybody wants, are they there? Like what we're talking about now, again, on the premium board quite a bit, is this D2 tackle that Iowa offered. They've offered him, and then they offered Raylen Sharpe out of the portal. Those are the only two that we're aware of that they offered, despite being over within this last month or 2 weeks or whatever it's been. But it's supply and demand, because everybody needs a D tackle. And who does he have offers from now? Michigan, Florida State, Oklahoma. Just went on visits to Wisconsin and Arkansas. Gonna go on a visit to Michigan State, I think I saw on Twitter. He's gonna go to places that are gonna be like, here's the money, because we need you, and all these other schools are gonna be after you. And it's gonna be the same thing for any quality player that you can get out of the portal. And therefore, then you have to. I don't mean this, I guess, as derogatory as it's going to sound, because I covered the FCS. I know there's some really quality players. You have to dip down into FCS. You have to dip down into G5 instead of bringing in guys who have that P4 experience, that Power 4, Power 5 experience, because of the situation at hand that you're in a bind that you put yourself in.
Yeah, it's not entirely dissimilar to, I mean, if you just look at the NFL draft that just happened, 6 of the top 12 guys that went were QBs. It's not because they were 6 of the 12 best players available in the draft. It was need, and it was an understanding of the value of the position.
Unless you're the Falcons.
Well, then there's
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Shout out to Kirk Cousins. Yeah, but like, by and large, you sort of have to understand that there's going to be premiums on certain positions. And when somebody who's got that advantageous spot, whether it's a draft pick or whether it's, an NIL cash machine that, outstrips Iowa. And that's not a knock on the Swarm, because Iowa has a very robust NIL program, but it's also not Michigan's, and doesn't claim to be on that level. And so it's a situation where, all right, like you said, Elliot, are you going back to the developmental guys that everybody else has been passing up? Because we've seen some gems come through Iowa City, but usually that is the territory of guys where Kirk Ferentz has the luxury of 5 or, recently 6 years to develop these guys. Guys coming out of the portal, you don't have that luxury. It's can you help me win right now? And there's a few of them that say, yeah, but I can help other teams win too. And you can't really knock them for, coming to that conclusion when it's more money or it's a more exciting offense or name it. You can't really knock it. But it does sort of point to a structural inadequacy that the Hawkeyes are sort of bumping into right now.
So, as I alluded to, they are strapped for scholarships at this moment in time. Portal closes, or has closed, I guess, as of today for grad students. May 1st, yesterday, Wednesday, or sorry, excuse me. What day is it? Today's Wednesday as we're recording this. Tuesday,
Yes.
it closed for underclassmen, and they didn't have enough guys enter the portal, reportedly to this point in time. My point on that I want to hit on, because we don't want to divulge too much. Got a premium article coming out about what's next, how they can handle this situation. Pretty well sourced, and we've got some great intel over the last day into that as well. So stay tuned for that. If you're not a subscriber, you can join us, iowa.rivals.com/subscribe, so you can get all that intel, be informed about what's going on with the scholarship situation, how they're going to handle it, etc. So the situation at hand regarding the portal and what might transpire in the next day, 2 days, depending on when you're listening to this, is it takes about 48 hours for the transfer portal paperwork to go through and for players to officially be in the portal. Now, underclassmen, that probably is that 48-hour window is going to be capped right at the end of the day on Thursday. And for graduate transfers, it's going to be at the end of the day on Friday. Now, regarding grad transfers, probably not going to be a thing for Iowa. So for Iowa fans, it can be cut off right at the end of Thursday, because who's going to grad transfer after deciding to come back for their final year? I don't think Nick DeYoung or Kyler Fisher are going to hit the portal anytime soon, nor will Kirk Ferentz or anybody on the staff want them to necessarily. They brought these guys back with open arms, all those guys on the defensive side of the ball coming back. But that's also what put them in this situation. And clearly, other than probably Deacon and Cale Vanderbush, they didn't have conversations where it's like, you're probably not going to see the field. You should probably go somewhere else. That's really not their MO, right? And if it was their MO, they would have handled it. Because there are players on this roster that probably aren't going to see the field. If they do, it'll be right towards the end of their career. And they could have gone to the portal and could have ended up G5 and could have ended up at FCS and got playing time if the Iowa staff thought that was the best route. Clearly, they don't. Overall, they might for a few players. Maybe they didn't even have those conversations with Deacon or Cale Vanderbush, who saw the writing on the wall. Like, for all we know, that's how it went. But they're in a situation where they dug themselves into this hole, and kind of lucky for them, Caden Proctor left the roster. So did Jacob Bostic. So did Cale. So did Deacon. And of course, Griffin Little. Is it Little or Liddell? I don't know if you guys recognize the name Griffin. He was a guy who
I
was,
recognize it. I don't think I've ever heard it said out loud.
there you go.
Yeah.
He was put on medical scholarship, so he's done now. Whether or not he's going to enter the portal, I didn't see anything about him entering the portal, so he may just stick around at Iowa for the rest of his college career and be on scholarship and call it good, but that won't count towards Iowa's numbers. So they're just in a spot where they dug themselves a hole. Their morals almost won't let them get out of it, which I stick to your morals. That's as far as I'm reading into it. But it's not a situation that is easily remedied, especially Adam, you'll remember this. We heard Kirk's presser quote was, "It'll figure itself out."
Yeah. Yeah. And that's about all we got.
Right. Well, Kirk, it almost did. Like, I'm not going to divulge numbers exactly, but they are over. Premium subscribers can head over to our scholarship distribution chart and check that out. And of course, it'll be part of that article that I've got coming. It should be available right now on iowa.rivals.com. I should finish that up tonight and get it ready for the morning. But it's not a situation, like I said, that's easily remedied. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that won't divulge too much from that article that I got coming for our premium folks. But Ross.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to steal your thunder, but my perspective, I guess, is that it is definitely an issue. We don't have a clear sense of what the solution fully is yet. It's also not something that the coaching staff seems, at least, Ferentz seems super concerned about. I mean, they are offering, you mentioned they offered Sharpe, they offered the D tackle. So they're still making offers, not a lot, but some, even though, they're still dealing with this, sticky math in terms of the scholarship situation. So, they seem confident they're going to get it worked out. Obviously, we wish we knew exactly what their plan was, I think. But yeah, it is an interesting thing to follow the rest of this summer, or spring and summer, I think, for sure.
Now, speaking of portal, speaking of scholarships, Iowa men's basketball really has their hands in the portal right now. We got some really big updates on iowa.rivals.com regarding Matt Cross, the UMass transfer, all Atlantic 10, first team forward, 6'7", guy who can rebound. We got some really solid intel on him and his looming decision where he's visiting currently, or plans to visit this week, and when his decision will come. You can be informed on all of that at iowa.rivals.com. Man, the shameless plugs this evening, they are aplenty. Now, with that, if Payton Sandfort decides to return, they'll have one scholarship left. And Matt Cross ultimately commits to Iowa, they'll have one scholarship left. If Payton decides to go to the NBA, which again, we've got intel on iowa.rivals.com, and Matt Cross commits elsewhere, they'll have 3 scholarships available. If it's a mixture, one of the two, Cross commits, Sandfort leaves for the NBA, then they'll have 2 scholarships available, or vice versa. They'll have 2 scholarships available. So what we're going to do here, and what I prompted in our little rundown that we share prior to the podcast, is hypothetically, what I'm saying is that Cross commits and Sandfort returns, because there are so many variables with those two that we'll just go with the one that's a little more solid and say they've got one scholarship available out of the portal. Cross commits again. This is hypothetical. Let's say Cross commits, Sandfort returns instead of going to the NBA and plays out his final year of eligibility. What kind of player position, like what should the Hawkeyes go for in the portal, assuming those two are on the roster next season? Is it a guard? Should they get a forward that you can add to the front court? Because we saw what Ben Krikke was and wasn't last season in the front court. He brought in Evan Bronze, who wasn't able to play a ton of minutes last season. Clearly super athletic, just didn't quite put it all together in his first year from transferring from Belmont to Iowa. Does that change? Like, to me, as the men's basketball beat writer, to me it's probably a 2-3, maybe a combo guard that you bring in, because right now Josh Dix is your only real 2. Other than that, you've got some guys who can probably play the 2, probably play the 3, between Payton Sandfort, Price Sandfort, right? And then Cooper Koch, who could probably play the 2, 3, 4. He's a little bit tall for a 2. So is Payton Sandfort, Price is pretty tall too. But you've got guys with positional flexibility. Do you want a 2-3? Do you want a 1-2? What do you want? What are you searching for in the portal? To me, it's probably a guard that leans more to that 2 guard, but can be a secondary ball handler if you need it. That's what I see being a need. Whether or not they can get that guy is one thing, but what do you guys see on this roster in terms of who they should go after? Ross, I'll go to you here first.
Yeah, I think I lean towards trying to get a big man, someone like a forward that can help with defense and rebounding, maybe someone who can back up Freeman and when he needs to sit or rest or gets in foul trouble. Hopefully not, but probably will happen. Because I don't know that they have a guy that fits that role really well on the roster right now or coming in with this class. Neither Koch nor Tajo seem like ideal fits for that role to me. Let me know if I'm, got that wrong. But that's where I would go. I think is, that's they added Cricky last year. He gave them scoring. The defense and rebounding was not what you wanted on a consistent basis. He had a couple games with some great rebounding totals. Wasn't really there across the 30 odd game season. The defense was also not really there across the 30 game season. So that's where I would go. Adam, what are you adding on your shopping list?
Well, I would simply pick up LeBron James. I would get LeBron James out of the portal and, just transform the team just like that. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that, guys. Come on. No.
I'm gonna show you guys my intelligence here and say the collective can't afford that.
Well, Iowa is a Nike school, so anything's possible here at this. No, it's sort of a tough thing because if you just look at roles and types, archetypes, if you will, Iowa, has guys that fit those roles, especially now that Thelwell's in the mix as sort of that combo 1-2, which was their most glaring need, and obviously the one that they addressed first for that reason. Now that said, let's consider the hypothetical where LeBron James is not eligible to play in college basketball. The NCAA is just this iron fist and completely unfair. But if that happens to be the case, if his 21-year career doesn't make him 21 years old again in the NCAA's eyes, they do sort of need that bigger player who has that wide range of skills. And, Tajo could be that guy, probably won't be his first year. Sandfort is sort of flirting with that, but, ultimately, do you really, really want Payton Sandfort banging in the paint for 20 of his, 35 minutes and still, hope that he can be hitting threes in the last minute of the game? You do want to make his job easier. And so if Tajo's not there yet, and I don't think it's fair to expect him to be there, if Koch isn't really that guy yet, and again, let's go worst case scenario here and say Riley Mulvey is not going to be the 25-minute a guy, sort of player on the interior either. I do think, especially with the way Owen Freeman struggled with foul trouble at times. Some of that was some rough calls, but the Big Ten is rather notable for some rough and inconsistent calls. And so what's your backup plan to address that? And, is Dembele your backup plan? Is Mulvey your backup plan? Is that really what you want? It's like, I really do think that, yeah, I think you, like Elliot, like you said, you go big and really like 6'10" or above, and really sort of, and it doesn't have to be shopper's value Owen Freeman, but you do want to sort of take the value of fouling Freeman onto the bench away, and a difference maker at that 5 sort of helps you get there. So that's my thought.
So obviously that was a consideration of mine as well. The reason I probably went more 2-3, 1-2 combo guard, combo, shooting guard, small forward is, well, a couple of reasons. Tajo is probably more of a 3-4 as opposed to a forward, but he could be your small ball. If you want to play small ball, he could be your small ball 5 if you want to just run, right? From what I've been told, Logi is showing a lot of growth. And he's a guy that, he could start. He could start next season. He could be your 4, depending on how you feel about him playing him and Owen Freeman on the floor at the same time. If you think
I'm in favor personally.
If you think he can really spread the floor, if his jump shot's been more consistent, then you'd have my attention in that regard. I've also now been told by not just somebody close to the basketball team, not just somebody close to the team, but another very informed person that Tajo could start next year. So maybe he's your 4. Maybe he's a 3. And obviously, if Sandfort comes back, he's your 3. But it also becomes a situation where does Fran feel pressed to play Riley Mulvey and Evan Bronze? Because, like I said, Bronze has the athleticism. He just appears to be a step slow, and I think that might just be a thing of making that jump to the next level, and having that year of experience might help. And he can be your guy who comes in relief of Owen. I think I think we have an idea of what Riley Mulvey is. I don't know that he's going to be a guy that can play a ton going forward. We will see. Now, as far as that front court goes, man, I think it's your fours and your clear 4s and 5s are Freeman, Dembele, Bronze, Mulvey, and I mean, I don't know that you can throw Tajo in that. So I guess even as the beat writer here, I think you've swayed me. Both of you have. I the issue that I think kept me from saying, and if I do say one or the other between a power forward and a center, I'd probably say a center, but you probably prefer a guy who can do both. A guy who can maybe play with that starting 5. You probably don't want that just based on cost of what you're going to have to pay to go get. Probably a guy who can step up from that lower level and be a rotational piece. But the thing that kept me from that is just you've got Drew Thelwell and you've got Brock Harding and you've got Josh Dix. Now, in that scenario that I posed, Matt Cross commits, right? And he's your 4. So to revert back to that scenario that I said, he's probably going to be your starting 4. And that puts you in a lot better situation in the front court than just the roster as it's currently constructed, right? I almost forgot about that for a second. I think that was the scenario that I posed. But for that reason, I go 1, 2, 2, 3, because Cross is plug and play at power forward. He got the rebounds. He'd be a sight for sore eyes for Iowa basketball fans because he's a 4 that consistently gets rebounds. He can shoot from the outside. He can score in a variety of ways. He's got experience at Miami, Louisville, and UMass, so he's done it at the higher levels. And so I think that he is going to help that front court situation a lot. With that said, I think your rotation is Thelwell as your starting lineup if they land Cross is Thelwell, Dix, and Payton Sandfort comes back. Sandfort, Cross, and then Freeman. And your rotational pieces are Brock Harding, Chris Tajo. Let me see here. Chris Tajo.
Dembele.
Probably, yes, Dembele. And potentially Cooper Koch as a freshman as well. So I think going 4 deep into your bench is something that Fran would be happy with to start. And so again, that's all contingent on Cross committing and Sandfort coming back to Iowa out of the draft.
You think Thelwell would start over Harding next year?
Yeah, I do. Thelwell's he's a 6'3" guard with 4 years of college basketball experience. I think that's his expectation coming in from Morehead State. They told him they need a guy who can come in and contribute and lead. I mean, he was top 20 in the country in assists per game and total assists for the season. So he's a guy that adds size that Harding doesn't have. He has experience that Harding doesn't have. And he moves the ball, right? In Fran's offense, he moves the ball. And I really like Thelwell. He's not the gem of the portal class by any means, but he's a really nice add. And I think it means Harding comes off the bench. I would imagine he has more of a role, maybe like 5 more minutes per game than he did this previous season, considering he didn't have the experience. But I think Thelwell is kind of your mercenary guard that you bring in this transition year between Brock Harding being a freshman and then going to a position where he can start full time. You can trust him at that, even with the lack of size. So I see Thelwell as a starter for the Hawkeyes day one. Anything to add there, you guys? You guys good? No? All right.
I think you nailed it.
Cool. And we will wrap it up this episode of Hotcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're on YouTube, make sure that you hit subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, drop a like, leave a comment. Let us know if you think what's going on with the portal situation. Do you think the Hawkeyes land Cross? Do you think Sandfort comes back? Who should they go get out of the portal? What type of player should they go get out of the portal? If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, leave that rate and review, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. That helps us out a lot, and it does make us very happy. I am Elliot Clough, recruiting analyst and host, as well as men's basketball beat writer, football beat writer, etc. And don't forget, we got all that premium content on the site right now that you can go check out. And if you're not a premium subscriber yet, you can do that today at iowa.rivals.com/subscribe. So once again, I am Elliot Clough at Elliot Clough on Twitter, joined by Adam Jacoby and Ross Binder for this episode of Hotcast. For now, we will see you next time.